is there, you know how you make commitment to your friends, or you make commitment, can we make a commitment to this group as far as moving forward? Some things that, you know, some conversations you might be having with your friends, you know, tonight or tomorrow, or within your circle. What are some action steps? You know, we talk about, you know, I do want to talk about action steps. What are some things that, you know, people don't mind sharing? What are some things, you know, that you're going to start doing, right? Because I hear that we are talking, but also we need, you know, it needs to be actions as well. So does anybody want to share as far as, you know, what they going to do?
For me, it would be what really came out of this for me is volunteerism. So that's my blind spot. If we talk about the things that we know we need to do, but we just don't do them or we don't acknowledge. I volunteered. I have been volunteering nonstop really since this has all happened, and feel guilty. Should have been volunteering more by shopping and donating food. My eyes were just wide awake when it came to are wide open when it came to the amount of children who are hungry in Minneapolis. And so the riots have brought out community. It's brought out community service. It won't ever bring back the man that died behind all of this, but I think we can do a lot of positive things in his honor. I want to be more involved in legislature. I haven't spent, I spent, imagine this, I spent a lot of time talking, but not enough time doing and getting down into it, just really knowing how the branches of our government really truly work. Like my eyes are really open as to how the police union works and how people get voted into office. And we're focused so much on your president. No shade. But we don't really focus on all the people that actually pass the laws and lobby for those laws and who they look like, who are they in your community. And so this has sparked that for me. I want to be more involved in that aspect of change. So for me, that's a great question, James. My answer to that is volunteerism is number one. I'm really mad at myself for not doing more in that aspect, and know better, because you know what you know, right? And so that is my takeaway. And then two is to really get more engaged in who I put into office, and not just waiting until it's time to vote for a president, but knowing that who the real the lobbyists are, the power makers, the policy changes and things like that in my community. So that's what I plan to do.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, thanks, Ron. I was just going to say that I wanted to piggyback off of Leslie. I think one of the things that I participated in a march the last Sunday, and it sort of emphasized to me that, wow, I am not connected to my local, my community at all in any way. And it's safe to say that I think that the neighborhood that I live in is predominantly African-American. It's going through a lot of gentrification. There's a lot of housing issues that are arising, and I haven't been connected with my local politics. And it's really easy for us to get focused in on the national scene and what dumb shit is doing. And I think this is a great opportunity to really understand who my local politicians are, who is actually advocating for equity amongst all of our community. And so I don't mean to echo the same thing, but I think Leslie kind of hit on it. I mean, it has to start locally. We cannot continue to focus on the national picture unless we start to build the foundation in our own neighborhood. So I think that's kind of where I want to focus my attention and volunteer my time.
That's all. Yeah, one of the things in piggybacking is, starting with local. Who's your council person? Who's this? Who's that? When you start in the beginning of just with your own neighborhood, how I grew up and where I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, you knew your neighbors, you knew who your council people were. Roxy and I were fortunate enough to live across the street from one of our council members, Mr. Robinson. And I learned a lot from that guy. Not only are you embedded in your community, but your values and your culture and your character is representative of the community that you're in. So you have to get to know these local people. Also, don't be afraid to call someone on their stuff. I have friends who are senators, judges, and whatnot. We are having we're having conversations, and for to be able to, you know, start in your community with your local politician. If a guy has a better idea, listen to it, support it. If you have a better idea and you want people to listen to, get out there and create your own platform. Because if you don't do it, somebody else might. I'm not going to say somebody else will, but somebody else might. But if you feel coming from this conversation that you want to see change, then be the change that you want to see. And if that means that, hey, I might have to run for office, how do I get support? Just by talking about what the issues are. Politics, unless is the strange bedfellow. That's been said many times, and it's also true. I happen to have the opportunity to help being part of the first Black mayor to be elected in Trenton, New Jersey. That in itself was a learning experience. But what I learned from that is, if I don't speak up, I can't expect someone else to speak up for me, because they may not say what I want to say. They may be close. So when we're uncomfortable right now about this, we can only change ourselves in order to move on to some sort of change. So that's where I see, that's where it all starts, grassroots. So yes, volunteering and everything else, but the bottom line is those who make those rules, those who pass those laws and whatnot, we have to have a bigger say, but we have to be educated in having that say. Just that. Getting on to something else a little bit, well, it's not that much different. And like Ron says, hey, you know, don't keep thanking him and giving him the credit. But I just wanted to put this out. When when you guys were at college, Ron was in what was the black organization that was called?
Council of African American Students.
Council of African American Students. I just wanted to kind of, looking at and hearing all this in the last couple of days, I'm just looking at some of the comparisons. I started a group in an all-Catholic school, pretty much predominantly white, called the Black Student Society in Cathedral High School. One of the reasons for starting that is not only some of my white friends, but mainly my Black friends were upset because we had a white man teaching us Black history. And it didn't sit well. It didn't sit well. So creating this group and writing the mission and the mission statement and all of that, it wasn't just for us as Black students to come together and say, it's not like we don't like you as a teacher or as a person, but you're trying to tell us or teach us our history and you don't look like us. That was something then. So so to get the organization started, of course, you have to meet with this particular board, whatever. Okay, we lay out our mission, why, but it was an inclusive group, but giving us as Black students in a predominantly white Catholic school a say and a recognition and to be recognized. And I got to say that worked out pretty well. It worked out pretty well because these kind of conversations were had then, and there was some understandings. Also, the fact that, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone, and I did that not just with the group, but when there was a rescue squad called it was a rescue squad that my friend was in, and I said, yeah, you know, Chambersburg Rescue Squad, that's, you know, Lebanon's own. That's pretty cool. Yeah, but he said to me, yeah, but you couldn't do it. I go, why couldn't I become a part of that? Why couldn't I become a junior EMT? Well, because it's all Italian. I'm the type of person, you challenge me and you tell me something like that, then I want to do it. So I had to go through various trainings and all that, but I did it. Being the first Black member of that, we had these kind of conversations and respectful conversations. I learned more about the Chambersburg, the people who lived in Chambersburg, Sicilians and everything else, and they learned a lot more about me and my neighborhood, what we did. But when we went on a call, and some of these calls weren't just going to get somebody who fell off a bike, got hit in a car or whatever. Some of these calls were pretty hot and heated and racial. But we went as a team, as a unit. So I learned from that, even though we all lived in different communities, that was where you come together. So will stuff like this, will something that happened like this ever change anything? I don't know, but I do know that individuals have to change. So yeah, like James was saying, so what do we do after this? So everybody should challenge themselves to do something that they haven't done or they've been thinking about doing. It might be uncomfortable, but start. Just make the start. That's pretty much what I got to say.
I'm gonna jump in. So that's my dad. If people haven't figured that out yet.
My dad.
And this has nothing to do with the conversation or topic that we're having, but people want to thank me for setting this up, and it's got nothing to do with me. It's got everything to do with a lot of people that are here, but so there's stereotypes, right? That most men make babies in jet, right? And a lot of Black men don't grow up with fathers. I've had a father in my life every day of my life. My dad grew up with his father, who's my grandfather. So I come from a line of fathers, and that's, I don't say it's one of the not most important thing in my life. So that's a lot of who I am, because I grew up with my dad. My parents were never married. My mother had me, I think she was 20 years old. She had my older sister, she was 19. My parents were never married, not really, I never knew them to be together, but my dad was there every day of my life. And his father and my grandmother, who's 85, or she'll be 85 in like 4 days. My grandfather passed away 6 years ago now. And I'm getting off track here, but they were married 50 years. He was married to my grandmother, who you guys don't know, but he was married to her for 50 years. He deserves an award for that. Yeah. And my grandfather's from Sparta, Georgia.
You're right.
Grew up with nothing. But the whole point of this, what I'm saying is that me having my dad in my life has everything to do with who I am today. And him having his father in his life, married to his mother for 50 years, has a lot to do with who he was. And I guess where that comes into this conversation is, for instance, George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter is going to grow up without her father. And several other victims are going to grow up without father. And then, so there's this thing about, okay, well, Black men aren't fathers to their children. Well, a lot of them are getting killed for one reason or another, right? And I'm not who I am without my dad. And my dad's not who he is without his father. And my grandfather didn't have a father. And I have 2 daughters, so I have no sons. And every Father's Day, I post a picture, for those of you who've been my friend for a long time, me, my dad, and my grandfather. Because that's a lot to do with who I am. So anyway.
Great connection.
Thank you.
Great connection. Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with the topic, but that came.
It actually is very relevant to the topic, very much so. And there's a lot of history behind the Black father in America, and that's a topic for another day. But I mean, this is strategic. It's a part of that systematic racism that a lot of us don't have. I was blessed to be with my father, but every other Black man I run across doesn't have that experience. And when we do, that's what we say. It's a blessing to have had my father, right?
That's a
Because of
shame, though, right?
systematic racism. It's so thick and it runs so deep. And we've just tipped the iceberg.
Isn't that a shame, though, Leslie? Isn't that a shame? Like, that's a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Anyway,
So
I didn't want to get off topic, but I wanted to bring that as into
Fathers are important, and that's the systemic part. When you rip the male dominant figure away from the family, it weakens the family. They knew that socially. Profiling has been here in all kinds of fashion, and it's a part of this systemic racism. That the conversation that needs to happen between parted, separated, never really got together, Black fathers and their sons. That conversation is a conversation that's necessary to happen for there to be healing. So people are walking around here with all kinds of pain and hurt people hurt people. So someone's going to have to start that conversation with the little boy that's in the park every day, and there's no dad. He needs a pseudo dad. He needs to understand which way his journey can go based on who's in his life. So if there can be people that can stand up for him and show him the way, and also for girls, our daughters need to hear a different narrative so that they can have a different story, as well as our sons. Stephen mentioned that we did have a celebration because he made it to 25. I think Mark was away when he was 25. I wouldn't call that a sad commentary. What I would call it is commentary. So when Stephen states nothing's going to change, that's his current reality because it is what it is. But things do change. You may not see them. They may be small steps, but change occurs. You and I are having this conversation because a change occurred in 1960, Civil Rights Act. We almost lost that act. Ronald Reagan, in the middle of the night, tried to get that act taken off the books. So somebody just happened to be up in the Congress and called Democrats and woke them up. And so that's why we still have the Civil Rights Act. But an act is not a law. It can be changed. So there are other things that we have to look at, keeping in place and making better at the same time. We can do both and. It's not either or. You can't think either or anymore. Change will come into somebody's life, and we may not know it, but they will, and that's the most important thing. And in talking and listening mostly, we haven't put our fingers on it. And I think maybe one spiritual leader will. We did see a murder, but we also saw a crucifixion. The crucifixion in the time of Yeshua, Jesus, brought the whole community there watch that murder. The whole community in the South used to come out and watch hangings as entertainment. Things did change after that. Some of it took decades for people to feel sorry for what they did and began to turn people in. So years after the fact, you had Medgar Evers, people that were involved in a lot of bombings and things, being arrested and going to jail, just like we see the Me Too movement. Finally, after 50, 60 years, people are going to jail. We're caught, I think, at the time of a perfect storm where there are lots of revelations occurring. There are lots of truths occurring, my truth, your truth. Things we said wouldn't change have changed. We have African American leaders, male and female. People said they would never see that, but it came. I had a conversation with your grandfather, Ronnie, when Barack Obama was running for president. At first, he didn't think that anything would come of that. And as the conversations continued and it got closer to the voting time, he was in Barack Obama's corner like nobody else was. He still was very skeptical because he didn't know how this could be happening in his lifetime. But that was a change that he never thought would happen. And he would say, oh, that's not going to change. That was a change. He recognized that. Lonnie, I don't think you knew this about your grandfather, but he did run for an alderman office for the Hopewell area at one time. And he used to round people up around voting time and drive them to the voting booths. Made sure everybody on our street went to vote and understood why it was important for them to vote. And true to his form, he said, after I take you to vote, we're gonna go do a round robin down at Scotty's Bar. And so that's where they end up. But at least he got them to vote. That was a change. A lot of those people hadn't registered to vote. He took them, registered them to vote, and then took them to vote. So it's, someone said it, it's going to be the individual that changes. And each one of us that makes a change, you represent humanity. One person represents humanity. So the change starts occurring, the energy starts moving, and before you know it, we have a movement and we have some change. But we have to keep doing it. It's not like you change today and it's for the rest of your life. It's constant. We just have to keep doing it, even when we're tired. Fannie Lou Hamer, one of the favorite persons that I followed, what I remember her saying is that I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then she did something. So we have to understand, yep, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. Not going to change. It doesn't matter what I do, but you just do the next best thing and you get your energy together because you're the change.
Brother.
I know people have talked about voting in politics a couple of times, and I think something that I really strongly believe, especially as we come up against our next election, everybody needs to vote.
Yeah.
Votes can't be taken for granted.
Yeah.
So remember whatever politician you want to support, and because you believe that person believes in whatever causes you believe in, make sure that that person is actually real with what they are saying and they're not taking people's votes for granted. And for instance, like Joe Biden has to pick a vice presidential candidate. It's extremely important that whoever he picks isn't just along for the ride and can bring something to the table that will help earn votes. And I'm not any kind of political expert, but I strongly believe this election lies on the black vote, and showing up, right? So if the black vote, quote, and that's a whole other thing, right? Like what the actual black vote means, or who that is. But if the black vote doesn't show up, Donald Trump wins the election. If they do show up, I think whether it's Joe Biden or who that vice president has to be able to stimulate people around the country to want to vote for them. So I think that's extremely important, that vote can't be taken for granted, that, okay, black people vote for Democrats, so just take it for granted, because I think we tried that in 2016 and it didn't work out so well. Because there are people, so I think so as people want to be strong politically behind whoever candidate they want to push, make sure that candidate is truly is representing the people that you need to come vote for that candidate. But again, I don't want to get down the whole political thing, but I know people have talked about that vote, but you can't take votes for granted, because otherwise the people, because I think I'm pretty sure everybody on this call would vote one way or another, but there's a a lot of people who will not come out to vote if they're not motivated to vote. And then that's how the election will get won and lost, by people just not showing up, right? Because people will vote one way no matter what, no matter who. People will vote another way no matter what, no matter who. And then there's some people who are like, okay, get me to the house and go vote.
If you
And I
don't
think
show
that
up,
strongly
you're still
stands
voting.
who the vice presidential candidate will be. And I have thoughts about who that may or may not be, but I don't know that that person comes from Minnesota.
Doesn't come from
Yeah,
Minnesota.
well, I can tell you that because I worked on Amy's campaign from November until March, about 30 hours a week, all pro bono. And I can tell you, because I'm so close to that campaign and I'm working on the Biden campaign about 10 hours a week right now, it's still in consideration. So he is listening. The group of folks that are working on the consideration of who, whether it's Val Demings or, et cetera, definitely it's being listened to. So, speak up right now. So I really encourage that. And just, I think, Ron, to your point earlier, like, what are we all going to do? Actually, I think, James, you asked us what the takeaway. I think this conversation needs to keep happening. We all should do what Ron did and setting these Zooms up with, a cross group of many of our friends and just inviting folks. And I think it was a tremendous commitment to have 3 nights in a row to do this, but I think you brought in a lot of people who both wanted to listen and wanted to share some of their convictions and their passions. But I think, what Barack would tell you is it starts from grassroots. It starts from your community, your neighborhoods, and your families. And that's where things really get embedded and changed.
Well said. Well said. I do want to share, because I asked a question, what will you do, when you leave this conversation? I had mentioned earlier that I'm a school social worker. And one of the things that I'm going to do is, and I have done, is I shot an email out today early today about setting up a meeting, sort of like this right here, with 75 teachers, right, that work with a lot of kids. And so we're going to have a conversation next Monday night. And I am looking forward to it. When I shot the email out, I didn't just send the Zoom account number out. What I did was, if you would like to participate or be part of this conversation, please send me an email. And I have a lot of replies so far. So I guess the reason I asked that question is because it's kind of like, you can talk about some things for a period of time, but, it's all about action too. So I am looking forward and excited about the conversation that's going to take place Monday. And what I realize is that the conversation that will be had is much bigger than me, right? It is much bigger than me, right? It's about every kid that walks into that door. And I know personally, there's a lot of kids that walk into that door that they feel like they have to leave something at the door in order to fit in. So, and that will be brought up. That will be brought up. I appreciate Leslie, just being real and just, it's coming from the heart. And I think sometimes when people know it's coming from the heart, it comes from a good place. And, it should not be taken personal. So, I was just thinking of ways, setting up the groundwork. So when we have this conversation, that right from the get-go, okay, this is what you could expect from this conversation. True feelings might come out and it's real, but at the end of the day, that's how we grow. So I just want to put that out there.
All right.
Yeah, one of the things that, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, the same thing that I was going to say is I've really appreciated all these Zoom opportunities, because as a single mom serving in the military, serving as a government contractor, it would be hard to find the time other than having this opportunity to figure out where to start. because I did feel quite overwhelmed. Like, well, what am I going to do? What do I have time to actually do besides go to the polls? And the polls that I care about most are the local ones, because I was so disappointed when I saw the popular vote versus what the Electoral College did. Like 3 of them voted for Colin Powell. He wasn't even running, so they wasted the votes of their constituents. And I think we all need to be real about that. Like, we can go to the polls, and that popular vote, those millions of people that came out, it didn't make a difference because of how the system's set up. And so we have to work together to change that system, because it no longer makes sense. When we were spread out as a country and they needed to pull those votes together, it made sense. But since everybody now has an opportunity to have their voice heard, it should just be a popular vote type of thing, I think, in our country. But one thing that I enjoy about this call is now all these people here, when I go back, I'm going to reach out and say, what else are you doing? What call can I get on with you, just to hear the different things that are being said and help me kind of guide where I can go. And in particular, like, one of the groups I went on was for my college. And so the students that are still there, they're having these experiences, and they need the alumni to come back and help them push what they're trying to push, because, you know, we're sending those dollars to the Alumni Association. So our voices matter to help those students that are there now. And so one advice that I would give to people that maybe don't know where to start is wherever you find yourself in your community, at your job, in your union, like, to start there. And I felt overwhelmed, and I just know that it helps to have these kind of opportunities that are virtual. And I think, like my mom, Roxy, was saying, like, the universe gave this opportunity, because I know for sure that I would not have been able to make it to a meeting that lasted several hours with my children. And having this opportunity is something that the universe gave us and a lot of people. And I hope that all of us continue to take these opportunities and to talk to each other.
And Cynthia talked for the first, she's been sitting there, but just talked for the first time. She is a brilliant human being. She's one of my younger cousins. She's Roxy's daughter, as she said. She went to West Point. I went to a state college. Then she she has a master's degree. She was just promoted to a major. And I don't know all the technical military terms, but if you're looking for a person
with 2 kids,
she's the one that you want to be.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're too kind. Oh, and another thing that's been kind of hard for me as well is like having these conversations in the military. It's very difficult. And like some people, like for me, I'm actually the equal opportunity advisor for my unit. And I reached out. I have my sergeant or command sergeant major and my battalion commander, which is like basically the top team in my unit. I'm like, hey, we really need to put out a statement like to our troops so that they know that we're understanding what's going on, that there are people in our out in the field that are hurting because of this. And I felt completely blown off, because the only thing that they mentioned was the social media policy. Be careful what you're posting online. They didn't talk about anything like that. And so like as a military member, we're sworn to like protect the Constitution, not necessarily like our leaders or political figures. And so a lot of people in the military are struggling with how to approach their feelings about the incident. And some of the leaders are falling short for the people that are, very valuable to the progression of this country.
So are you guard or active duty?
I'm guard.
Okay, gotcha. So sorry guys, I'm jumping in late. I apologize. So I am prior active duty and also a moderator and I help run a group called the Battle Buddies. We have 5,000 people. I was a cop in the military for a while, and we were talking about this morning, the whole police state thing and all that. I was trained very well to put my knee in the neck of a guy, and that I was trained for that. So that's the problem. I mean, I know we're going backwards. And sorry again, I joined late. But point being, if you're trained right, I was in many people's neck. That's the way to do it. That 6-minute thing that I saw, if I would have been one of those 3 guys standing behind those guys.
Why the fuck would you have to put your knee on somebody's neck? That's bullshit.
Well,
that's
again,
bullshit.
No, for
That's bullshit. Stop talking about that dumbass shit, man.
Let him,
You would
Steve,
never
let
have
him
to
talk,
put the
Steven.
knee on nobody's fucking neck. Fuck that.
let me finish.
Fuck that. Fuck that. Stop talking about that stupid ass shit. Fuck that. Talk about something else. Talk about something else.
I'm telling you.
Talk about something else.
Okay, let me finish.
Talk about something else. Talk about something else.
I think there might be people that could learn from what Jesse's going to say.
Yes, you could, and I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I'm saying if they're violent and they're active.
Fucking bullshit.
Calm down.
It's fucking bullshit. It's fucking bullshit.
Can you
fucking
please
bullshit? It's fucking funeral was fucking yesterday. It's fucking.
Can you mute him, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay. Point being, I've done this before, and so only when I've had to, and it's never been 6 minutes. That's my point. My point is, and it's never been 170 pounds of my body on top of somebody's neck ever. It's been if he's violent and he's angry and he's not going to like absolutely listen to what you
bullshit.
Why are you still talking? It's not bullshit. It's how they protect themselves. They have to go home with their kids. So my point being is, okay, so I don't agree with anything that happened because I saw it. I totally disagree, but I've been a cop and I've done this before. And so there's a point where you have to situation rather than getting shot. So point being, this situation is not right at all. So I'm going with you guys, all of you. It's nonsense. But if you're trained right, there's no reason to put 180 pounds in somebody's neck for 6 minutes. I've done it before. Not that long, and not 160 pounds. Point being, it's absolutely ridiculous, and this guy needs to be charged and prosecuted and done. Over. So I've done the cop thing. I've done it. So obviously I'm out of it now. But point being, if you're a cop, you want to go home. But these guys were absolutely
You should have been charged, motherfucker.
No, I'm with you. They're out of their minds. I get it. Now I'm on your guys' team. And again, I was military just like she was. I was trained. Let's call it that. And so I get it. But these guys should never have been allowed to make this happen. But there's training that needs to happen, like severe training. Because I knew how to do it, and I was only in for 4 years active duty. And these guys are like professional cops. So that's where that's where I'm going. I think there's a point to it is if you can't be trained, bye. That's it. There's no reason.
Yeah, I think Jesse, the issue right now is that we're just saying in general that's just flat out flabbergasting wrong to do any of that. I know you're explaining. Don't get me wrong. I know you're explaining why and how you were trained and things like that. I'm not saying that you weren't trained that way or you were trained right or wrong. We're just saying that's why he's saying it's absolute bullshit.
I agree.
That should even be part of the training, because the fact is, putting a knee on a neck, when really is that justifiable at all?
If you're
Any
being
human being.
Yes.
And so that's where the bigger argument is. I'm just saying what we're going at is the fact that the anger is at the fact that is part of the training in the first place.
But
am I right or wrong, guys? Do you guys agree or disagree?
I'm feeling you to the fullest.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Yeah, and just a clarification thing, it would be helpful for you to know. It was actually just seconds shy of 9 minutes, and he was already restrained.
Yep.
And I get the whole if someone is being violent.
Yep.
But I'm not sure what your point is on this, because I think earlier it was about the sergeant major, and I can't remember her name. Is it Cynthia?
Yeah.
Cynthia.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point that she was making that I thought was really important is that we have a situation right now where the military is feeling under siege, and they, like you said, Cynthia, you're there to uphold the Constitution, and every unfortunate motherfucker who's tried to do that in that role has been fired by 45 from doing their job.
Agreed.
And you guys are under so much siege right now.
Yep.
It is I don't even know how you're doing your job, because you're doing one of the hardest jobs that anyone can do.
Right.
And on top of that, you do not have the support of the chief of the country.
You got it.
And this is the actual problem.
Yeah, agreed.
And so, that's the reason why we all need to keep on the pressure, and we all have a job leaving tonight that we've got to continue this conversation.
Yep.
We've got to get people there to vote. We've got to, Cynthia's point, make sure that we are leveraging our relationships with the folks that we know that are running in our districts, and make sure that they know that they're working for us and this is the job that we are hiring them to do, or they're
Right.
fired.
My point is that, okay, going back to the knee and neck thing, because I know it's a high point of connect. If you're being threatened, and I'm not talking like 6-8 minutes, that's ridiculous. I'm talking get them under control. If they're high on PPP or whatever, if they're doing the things that they shouldn't be doing, that's a good way to intervene, but stop. Don't be 6 minutes, 8 minutes on top of this guy, right? Don't absolutely. Again, I was a cop for a long time. I would never do that ever. So when I saw that video, I was appalled, honestly, because those guys were not trained, and so the Minneapolis PD were not trained right in restraint. And so if he's not putting a gun in the back of your neck or putting in your life, there's no reason for that. Not one reason. And I agree with him. With whoever was talking earlier, that's necessary. And again, my point is that all of it is messed up. I'm watching that. And so,
Jesse, help me out with my ignorance here.
Yeah.
MP. Now the suspects or whatever, were those military people that you would?
Both.
Okay, and this was in Korea, or where were you?
All over the place. South Carolina, Korea, Turkey, you name it.
Okay, so the again, suspects, for lack of a better term, may have been military people or civilians just in the that your base was in?
Yep. Yep. Okay. And there's a point where you have to restrain yourself, but if you're trained right, that kind of shit would never happen, ever. You would never see the stuff on video that you saw with the Floyd guy. It would never happen. I've done it before myself because I had to, but that kind of stuff should never happen. So that's where the reform comes in, right? So training needs to be improved, especially in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they're not been any better. But point being, they need to train their people to know how to restrain people. If we have to take the knees off the necks, fine. But put yourself in a situation where you have a guy, this Floyd guy, being totally assigned. He was not a threat. Again, I don't agree with any of it. But put yourself in a situation where a guy has a knife coming at you. What do you do? Or he has a gun coming at you. What do you do? Because you want to go home to your wife and kids. That's my point. Train. I was trained. That's
so. I mean, I guess I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing Jesse from his experience. And that's how he's trained. And then I'm hearing Heidi, who's talking about and Ray. Both of you are saying, hey, there is this type of restraint needs to be off the list of things to use.
I say
that's what I'm hearing, and I think is there. And I think this is what we start to delve into. What does defunding the police mean? Is it reimagining how our law enforcement engages with a potential suspect? Is there too much that is being put on our law enforcement to not only have some sort of restraint training to becoming a therapist and de-escalation. I mean, they are put under a lot of pressure, but I think what's most important is that we push our community enforcement to use different tools, and maybe restraint is not, at least the type of tactics we're using, is what is escalating the issue. Are we profiling? Maybe we should be profiling. Are we escalating and using tactics that are escalating the situation? Maybe we need to reevaluate that and take that off the list of things, because quite frankly, I mean, a knee to a neck doesn't feel like a tactic to use when someone's on the ground with their chest to the ground.
No. I mean,
already handcuffed. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I'm hearing.
Agreed. So the idea is community policing, and that we did that a lot. So we would spend a lot of time community policing, getting people together, just absolutely riding mountain bikes by people's houses, meeting people, shaking hands, like making them know that we're not the bad guys. And that's what we did a lot, and it minimized everything. And so the knee to the neck thing is something that's extreme and should never happen unless someone's coming at you with something that's going to hurt you. But point being, community policing, go out there, talk to people, understand their issues, bring it back to your squadron or whatever, police station, and make them understand. And it worked for us. I was in a really bad place for a very long time, and it worked because we were out there community policing civilians who weren't part of our military, and they wanted to hear what we wanted to, we wanted to hear what they wanted to say, and we'd bring it back, and then we'd report it back, and we'd act on it. And it's simple as that. It's training, it's community policing, it's simple as that. The problem is you get a rogue dick, sorry, I'm gonna watch my mouth, a rogue dick who puts a knee in the back of the guy's neck for 7 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it was, and now all hell breaks loose. It's like, where's the training? Like, if he's not threatening you, then why? For what? I'm on you guys' team. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, in my experience, I just wanted to add that to you guys' conversation. There's no reason for that. None.
But it also seems absurd to put a knee on a neck, regardless of the situation. When you have batons, you have tasers, you have
it's not
guys around you. Like, a knee on the neck is such a fragile part of the body.
Yeah, but if you're not putting all your weight on it and crushing his neck, you don't have nothing to worry about. It's just a matter of
you can crush a neck with a hand.
You're already overweight.
As a future speech language pathologist, I'm getting my master's right now. You can do a lot to the airway and the neck without a lot of pressure. So.
Right. But again, that's how we were trained. And I never got...
I talked to somebody who went through the academy. They said that was never part of the training.
No, that's how
I find it barbaric.
I mean, how do you explain that, man?
There's so many advanced tools. There's so many advanced tools right now.
But I think what we hear here is that Jesse's bringing up a bigger issue, which is we have a huge
police brutality.
With police training. Yeah, absolutely. Police brutality, Stephen, for sure. But I just mean the training. The training is an absolute debacle. It's miserable. And it varies around the country. And I think that, hearing Cynthia talk about it, versus what Jesse saying, it varies around the country. And I think that we might be getting to part of the core of the issue. We need to get
trained to stop the threat.
Reform. Yeah,
we still have rogue people.
Yeah, we need to get to a point of full reform, nationwide reform. And then, yes, we can custom some things that are based on certain communities that, need to be a little bit accustomed to that community. But I think we need to get overhaul training and discipline and action to reform the way police departments operate in America, period, point blank. Because we don't have any guidelines from a federal level that shows a sense of equality, of how we treat people in an equal manner. And then at the same time, the brutality is there. I mean, just even look at the 75-year-old white man who got pushed and hit, banged his head. He could have killed him in that moment. So the brutality issue is obviously, number one, the hardest on Black America, the hardest on Brown America. But the brutality issue is there, period. And it just needs to, and it's not all police officers. We know that. We know there's a lot of really good police officers out there protecting and serving. But the percentage that are out there and are corrupt and are following bad training and are unfortunately taking bad training to the extreme, that part is really what's deepening the wound in America. We need to meet the problem there. You know what I mean? And that will take voting, and that will take us standing up for legislation, that will take town halls, that will take conversations like this. So I think that actually what he's bringing up is exactly the problem,
Well, one of the things that I don't know if you're familiar or anybody's familiar with is at the funeral of George Floyd, the mayor himself, the mayor of that area, said he was leaving to sign a law. And again, acts are different than laws. He was signing a law that would ban chokeholds, that would ban any type of resistance above the neck, above the waist. Okay. Now, there are other states and other cities and other cities who have signed off on this as well. So you have these bans so that, trained or not, rogue or not, you will now be accountable and responsible for anything like this. The other piece of this is that it's an unwritten rule. It's very hard to convict or get a conviction on a police officer. That is going to change, and it is changing by the fact that you have this nationwide, and I would say do some of your research on the other cities and whatnot, that they're banning these type of tactics. They're saying that you will do a certain process and procedure before you even draw a gun now. So a lot of this is happening. It's written law. So now you will have someone think twice about, well, I'm going to go to a further step. I'm going to take it to a different level. This will put in one's mind that, oh, wait a minute, I can get charged with this. I can do that. This could happen, and this could happen to me. And again, because of how this was seen around the world, I mean, the United States law enforcement is seen for what it is now. Unfortunately, we all know that that's murder. So now you have these laws signed, these things signed into law. Now you have to kind of wait, sit back and see what happens. But there are laws now. So
yeah, that happened in Minneapolis too, didn't it? Did
yes,
they change that you can't use chokeholds?
Yep, so that's not nationwide, is it? That's not nationwide yet.
And that's the thing is all these police law, they're local. Police are run locally. So whatever happens in your city is different than what happens in Minneapolis is different that happens down the street.
They're actually in Colorado. They're pushing through legislation right now on those tactics as well. It's in fact a bill has just moved to the House. So they're state to state. Those things are still available to police officers to use.
Yeah,
right. So there's nothing there.
So I think
well, you probably all saw that George Floyd's brother was in Congress today speaking to the law that they're trying to pass.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not. So what Jesse was saying is not completely absurd if that's truly how they were trained, because it sounds like to me that that's a lot of people, a lot of departments across the country are training people that way. Whether it's right or wrong is a whole nother conversation.
Right. No, but Ron, I believe that's how he was trained. Yeah, I believe
it. Right. Because even what's happened here, right, is that, there was and maybe Heidi might know the terminology, but the mayor of the police department said, hey, no certain kind of training. And then the union, Bob Kroll, said, okay, well, we'll pay for it. So that the city is sanctioning a certain type of training, but the police union said, hey, we'll pay for it. So then you have this kind of separate training.
Well, and that's the reason why we're trying to get rid of this union altogether, which will be a complete blessing, because that guy is absolute criminal. You know, but this conversation we're having is the same conversation of, you know, of gun control, or literally, I have no reason to believe and understand why we have any guns besides, you know, I know the northern Minnesota people would freak out if you took their rifles and their hunting, you know, items away from them. But, you know, it's the same thing. Chokeholds and handguns and semi-automatic, anything outside of a hunting utility should absolutely be outlawed. And if it works for Australia and New Zealand, the UK, and several countries in Europe, which was what we're going to study now as we're getting rid of traditional police departments, we have such an opportunity to make those kinds of sweeping legislative changes as well.
See, some of those what you were talking about, Ron, when the union said, yeah, we're going to pay for this. This started several months ago. It was a guy who came in from another area. He wanted to teach very similar trainings from the McCaw, and it got out into the news. And so, yeah, they said, no, we don't want you doing this. But the union said, hey, look, it's going to be on our time. And the union said it'll be on our dime. So those techniques or whatever they wanted to go to, they did. It should have been stopped. There should have been a better way to stop it, but it wasn't. You know, like so now you look at, like I said, legislation is being put together, city, state, and federal. Nancy Pelosi and a couple other people are bringing bills to the House to get this done nationwide now. So yes, individual cities, states, like, you know, Colorado, like got it on the books, or getting it done. So that is somewhat of a change. Again, it's going to be under every takedown, every arrest and whatnot is going to be scrutinized, and it very well should be, especially if it's done right. You look through the internet, you see all kinds of different videos of how corruptness is. Again, law enforcement has, or up to now, had this cushion. That cushion is now going to be upset, you know. So it's going to happen. It will happen. I'm a true believer that it will happen. That it will get somewhat better. Is it going to be perfect? No, but it will somewhat get better. And you do have the rogues. The rogues will be dealt with. But the above the neck and all that type of restraint stuff is there's going to be action taken on it. That's all I got to say about it.
Great, Ron.
All right. Is Shane still there, or is he just looking in? Oh, there you are. I know you kind of late to the party.
Yeah, sorry, my kids have been in and out, so I had.
No, I get it, but
a lot easier.
And I don't want to keep everybody up, so if people want to get going, but I wanted to bring Shane in because, or not, he was always welcome to the conversation, but I wanted to chat with him because you've been really, really active. You live 1 million miles from Minneapolis.
Yeah. About 25.
But you've been spending a lot of time in the city volunteering and donating food, and you brought your kids in.
We've been in, so we've donated. Every day we've tried to pick something good to do that we can figure out a way. Because I mean, it's Minnesota, Minneapolis, Victoria, like, you know. So we've my kids and I went shopping 3 different times with my wife too. One of the times, and we went and dropped off to 3 different food drives, and then I took both kids and drove around separately with them to kind of see what was happening. And we took, I gave one kid, my 10-year-old, a camera, and we walked around just taking pictures about everything. And said, you got to take all this in and understand what's going on. So it was a really good way to start bridging some conversations, because in his world, it was interesting because he is a kid who doesn't understand why in the world anybody would be treated any different. His 2 out of his 3 best friends are Black, right? So he's like, what's Black Lives Matter? Like, what an absurd thing to think anybody would think that they didn't, was his reaction. And he was that somebody would think that there's anything different, like in his world. And the only difference between them is some days Davin wears, different colored shorts, or Davin's faster than one friend and the other friend's faster than him, like that's it. And so now we're teaching this whole other level of, well, yes, and that's what we want, but other people don't see it that way. And we have to be a part of going out and keeping, like we're all in this together kind of a thing. So we've been very active going out to Minneapolis. Friend of mine was the principal at Minnesota Transitions Charter School, and that was right in the hit. Right, I mean, they're in a strip mall. They're right between the Cub Foods and the Target that went looted all over the news. So we've been pretty active with his school. So Davin's been trying to do his own little fundraisers and stuff, and then figuring out how else we can just be a part of the solution, and trying to make sure my kids know what's going on. So, and I've been silent because I jumped in late when I was working the last 2 days on the East Coast, and it said 10 o'clock for these calls. So I was like, all right, I got till 10 o'clock. I didn't realize that was an East Coast thing when I came back to Central Time Zone. It was actually 9 o'clock. So.
The only person we haven't heard from is Mark Tossi. You still around, Mark?
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to listen, really, and I guess hear what everyone else had to say.
Mark is Roxy's son, cousin, and Roxy's my dad's sister. Military veteran, actually lived in St. Paul for a little while. Now he's where were you born?
I was born in Georgia, but I'm living in Maryland now.
No, I know that, but I was just trying to, of your, because you guys have lived all around the world, so I can't.
Oh yeah, I was born in Georgia, and then my sister was born in Hawaii. After that, we were in Panama, and then Maryland. We all kind of, I guess, centralized here for a little while. And with Tossies, we never stopped moving.
Yeah, so that's so his father, their father was a career Army, and so that's why they moved all around the world. And then Mark's a military veteran, and then lived in St. Paul here for a little while, and now is back in Maryland. So yeah, I just wanted to bring you in because we hadn't heard from you yet either.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to listen, man, to be honest with you. I don't really have much to say.
Okay. All right, well, this one's gone 3 hours and 20 minutes. I think that's our...
Pretty
good.
Another question was asked, what could you do, or what is a vision statement or mission statement? I find it really helpful to write. I have about, 10, 15 years of journals. And even though you don't complete a whole book, but sometimes to do something different, to elicit other feelings that may be deep inside of you that you don't know about. Even to walk through nature and try to find some order in the chaos and discord that we're going through. Believe it or not, we have a nation just from viewing the Tamir Rice and all of the other Trayvon, all of those things. We have a collective PTSD. And so we're going to respond in a lot of ways based on how just viewing that and hearing that affects us. And I want all of us to be cognizant that we've changed. We've witnessed something that if you have an ounce of DNA in your body, you have changed.
Oh, you made me a great point.
I think it's probably time to call a wrap to this one. But I appreciate you guys being on here. And some of you have been on here for multiple days and multiple hours. So I appreciate that. And again, my goal when we started this thing a few days ago was to just let people talk to each other. And then if I could be the conduit to bringing people that don't know each other, who have differing views, similar views, or could help each other, I want to be able to do that. So that was kind of the goal of all this. And selfishly and personally, it's connected me back to some people I haven't seen or talked to for a long time. I couldn't have pulled this off without all you people coming on and joining. And the encouragement. So I really appreciate that. Hopefully somebody got something out of this, and then hopefully it doesn't end with the end of this conversation or whatever conversations that we're all having personally and locally over the next couple of weeks. If we can keep that going, then that would be great. But I do really appreciate everybody coming on, because the conversation isn't me with my Zoom account. It's everybody being able to share what they think, what they feel, their views, and those kind of things. So I want to thank everybody for coming on here.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks.
Thanks for the invitation, Ron. And I think you had mentioned something about, getting people together, getting like-minded people together, or people you might not agree with, but appreciate that they bring it up. Like, for instance, that gentleman that you had that was talking about, putting a knee in folks' neck and how he was trained. When he started talking, the natural thing that I want to do, I have to be honest, I wanted to walk away from my computer and slam my computer, because, sometimes, people try to change the narrative. But to be very honest, there's many stories. There are many people, we talk about being at the table. So we having this conversation. So in so many words, he did represent something. He represented officers and how he was trained, right?
Right.
So even though I wasn't crazy about hearing what he had to say, because I was trying to figure out what point what he was trying to make, what was he trying to state? But also there are many people out there that have his mind viewpoint, right? So to sit here, at first I was bothered by it, but again, that's how we all grow when you're uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable for many reasons. But as we ending this conversation soon, I just want to say I got a lot out of it, and I appreciate you. One thing I appreciate, Ron, as far as what you said about your dad, as far as I see. Are you Ron Jr.? Are you Junior Ron?
No.
Okay. Well, okay. In so many words, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of, to have your father on this, be part of this conversation and, conversation he had many years ago, and to have your Aunt Roxy on here and to have, many of your family members. At first, I was going to give you a hard time and just say, man, y'all just need to call each other and have these conversations. I'm just teasing. But on a serious note, this was a needed conversation, and we need to have more. And sometimes it's going to be difficult, but at the end of the day, that's how we grow. So,
yeah, could not agree more. Thank you, James, for saying that. I thought some incredible points were made tonight, but more importantly, they were coming from a very honest place and a very heartfelt place. And I think that this is where we have to start. We have to start, like I was saying earlier, ripping off the Band-Aid and kind of getting honest with each other. And I think that this is one great example of where it needs to start in conversation. And then there's obviously the actions that we need to take. And many people express some of the action they're going to be taking, which is wonderful. I think we all need to keep thinking the kind of actions that we can take in our own communities, starting with our own kids, our own children, whether you're, you know, whatever, whether you're white, black, Latino, Asian, whatever, or biracial, like my kids are. I think the important thing is that we started in the home and then take that on to the community and then take it onto a national level. And I think that all of us have the power within us to get to all levels. We got to believe that we can. But I think we need to keep unity, like unity, really saying those words and really meaning them, and then really taking the action to like bring people together. Like you just did, Ron, with this situation. You brought people together. I think we need to keep bringing unity and pulling each other in with honest conversation so that we start changing institutions and systems. So I think this is a great beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
I appreciate you being here, Ray.
Yeah, thank you. All right, guys.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Nice seeing you.
All right, good night. I appreciate everybody stopping by.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right.
All right, take care.